Today, I want to share how I helped a client move $11.6 million through a 1031 exchange into a DST, not just to defer taxes, not just to earn passive income, but to create a long-term stability for his children and build generational wealth plan that will outlast him. This is my experience and not a financial advice. Here's how it worked. My client sold 2 properties and had $11.6 million sitting in a 1031 exchange. Instead of looking at it as a one-time tax problem, we reframed the entire situation around one single question. How do we make this money serve your kids for decades? A DST, or Delaware Statutory Trust, became a fantastic solution. A DST allows investors to own fractional interest in large institutional-grade real estate, completely passive. It qualifies for a 1031 exchange, produces income, and keeps the equity protected inside a structure that can be passed down to the next generation with a tremendous tax advantage. So instead of the children inheriting a complicated property with management headaches or inheriting massive tax bill, they will inherit a professionally managed asset that continues to produce income. Now let's break down the process. First, you sell your property. That starts a 45-day identification window for the 1031 exchange. During those 45 days, you must choose the DST you want to move into. We looked at companies like Jones Lang LaSalle, Blue Owl, Ares, and Hines to place our capital as our sponsor. Then you have up to 180 days to close from the date of the property sale. Because DSTs are turnkey, once the funds are wired and documents signed, the heavy lifting is done. My client protected all $11.6 million from immediate taxation, but more importantly, he positioned that wealth so his children will receive clean, passive income-producing assets instead of a messy tax obligation. Now let's talk about the debt requirements. One of the properties my client sold had no debt, so entering into a DST was straightforward. But the other had debt, so we had to find a DST that carried a similar amount of debt to maintain a 1031 compliance. This can narrow the options, especially in certain interest rate environments, but it is still achievable, and we proved it with this client. Then there's the part most people don't know about, the DST to the 721 UPREIT. DSTs are typically held for 5 to 10 years, but most sponsors follow a 2-year safe harbor period before allowing a 721 UPREIT conversion. This 2-year period isn't a strict IRS law, but it's standard practice to protect the tax deferral. Once that 2-year mark hits, the DST interest can be exchanged into a REIT through what's called a 721 UPREIT. The money continues to be tax deferred through this process. It moves a family from fractional real estate ownership into REIT units, which are far easier for the children to inherit, manage, and eventually liquidate. After the UPREIT conversion, there is usually a 1-year holding period before those REIT units can be redeemed for cash, so a total holding period of 3 years. From a legacy perspective, this is huge. It means the next generation receives passive income, no management responsibilities, the ability to convert into liquidity without the burden of selling individual properties, and finally, a stepped-up basis when inherited. This is why we chose this path, especially those last two. As my client transfers his 1031 money into a 721 UPREIT and he ends up passing away, his children can choose to sell their shares without any tax consequence due to the stepped-up basis. Of course, there are also trade-offs. DSTs and 721 UPREITs are illiquid during the holding period. You give up control, debt matching can be tricky, and heavy fees typically exist because everything is essentially done for you. But for a client whose priority was building a financial foundation his children could rely on long after he's gone, this was the most strategic move he could make. If this was helpful, be sure to like and subscribe. If you have questions, let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching.